Well, we've finally arrived. One preview trailer a day for 6 days, today included. We've got a lot of time to run through, and I promise to be as thorough as I can, but remember that I'm only going to tell you what your characters would know upon arriving in Solstice. What you hear tonight isn't the half of it. The rest you'll have to discover for yourself. This evening you'll have access to all forums and tickets being the anonymous forms you can send in to staff for, say, reporting players, giving staff reviews, and registering your character so that staff knows who you are. As of tonight, you'll have everything you need to build your character. Use the forums to organize with others, plan your characters, and start talking about what we've been waiting so long to play. But enough of that. You came for a story, and a story you'll get. I recommend getting comfy and closing your eyes. You'll want to let your imaginations do all the work for you. Let's go back in time, long before the current people of Solstice knew it even existed. Solstice was once an Eden, teeming with all forms of life, living naturally, in harmony with one another and with the land. According to legend, Solstice was a gift from Balor as thanks for Basette's work elsewhere. The Lady of Light accepted the gift, of course, and spent a great deal of time caring and cultivating it. When she reached a point of being content with its growth, she invited other creatures in to enjoy it and maintain the land. They were the Testificates. Simple and sincere, these creatures settled into the land and quickly became one of the most populous inhabitants of the sanctuary. They thrived for timeless ages. However, as we all know, that dream wouldn't last. Basette began receiving desperate cries and prayers from the natives of her solstice. "Save us!" they cried. "We are overrun!" What could be troubling them? Basette turned her eyes to the sanctuary and saw the Testificates being killed, transformed into monsters. She purified them in fire, but still their numbers grew. The sanctuary was completely overrun with the monsters, former natives, fallen and risen again to kill their brothers. Basette, herself unable to stop the corruption of her people, turned to Mahina, her sister, for help. "I've done all that I know to do, and yet these infernal things refuse to die." Mahina, hearing her sister's plea, turned her own eyes onto the places Basette could not see, the shadows, the dark places of the world. However, she also could not find it. It was decided that the discovery of the source required some sort of deeper investigation than could be done from the heavens, and Basette called her champions from the world to Solstice in hopes that they might, at the very least, discover the source. By this time the Testificates had been nearly eliminated. An expedition of humans was the first group to answer Basette's call. Led by a knight by the name of Adams, this expedition of several hundred settlers were all well prepared to make their claim in the lands for the glory of their people and Basette. Upon their arrival at the base of the statue in the heart of the land, the humans were greeted with the goddess's voice. "Thank you, my beloved people, for proving your loyalty. As I asked for champions, you brought an army of them, and I see you came ready. I ask that you explore outward, find the farthest reaches of the sanctuary. Do not lay claims to my land until you have forgotten your homes and all you left behind." As the humans began their march into the wilderness in the beginning of spring, they began counting the years. Year 0, Year 1, Year 2. They were hard for the humans. They began their journey at the center of a desert with no direction, no map. Most did not survive to see what lied beyond the desert. Those who did, beaten, battered, demoralized, they fell to their knees at the sight of trees, of grass, the ocean. Overcome with relief, they planted their stakes and made camp. This camp was very successful. Resources were plentiful, wildlife was tame and available, and people reforged their spirits in the woodlands northwest of the desert. This camp became defendable, and the monsters found difficulty claiming more of the humans once they erected their walls and towers. Before they knew it, they had built a fortress of log and lumber. While they did not intend to stay there, it was hard to deny their safety in order to, once again, march through the deadly unknown. The humans named their expedition leader King Adams, and they collectively planned to keep the camp for the long term. However, their first king was already later in life, and, in year 34, he succumbed to the elements. His son was named king in his succession, and named the fortress Pretoria, the first settlement, and declared that they would not leave it. Adams II's reign, however, did not last long. Despite his young age, he found himself assassinated shortly after the decree in year 34. Pretoria was declared cursed and abandoned. John I, taking the throne after Adams II, led the people farther northwest, crossing a small channel of land on another favorable plain. A very similar slip of control occurred there, where the small camp became so alluring and comfortable to the humans that they again refused to leave until the death of their kings. Their second settlement, Roanoke, founded in year 58, was similarly declared cursed and abandoned in year 91. Cameron I, successor of John III, led the humans deeper into the sanctuary. Their camp was, perhaps, the best intended. They called it Boletaria, and it would serve as a base camp, designed to create other expeditions that would move farther and farther inland until Basset was satisfied. The plan was going nicely. Over 50 years passed, and a few more kings came and went. When the population reached a point that it could divide and settle a second location, dissension sparked within the kingdom. A large part of the population did not want to leave, while the other half felt that they had to. Not enough people volunteered. In order to increase morale for the order, King Cameron IV himself volunteered to lead the expedition. A very high-ranking noble family, the Allant family, led a coup to overthrow Cameron IV and keep the people inside the city. Allant I was successful in his overthrow, and was named king. Famously, he addressed his people after the coup. "If Basset wanted to throw you into the fire, she would have stopped me from killing that foolish so-called king. As he lies dead at my feet, I swear that I shall protect you so long as Our Lady sees me fit to do so. May I be cut down if I am unworthy." Despite many attempts, Allant I was never successfully assassinated, and died peacefully in his bed. His line would prove to be both the strongest and most troublesome for the humans. It's not known exactly when the Beastmen were created, but it's strongly held that it occurred around the year 255, in response to the insurmountable resilience of the humans of Boletaria, to the corruption as well as Basset's attempts to move them, peaceful or hostile. The Beastmen awoke in the deserts in the northwest of the sanctuary. New to life and unfamiliar with their new abilities and power, Mahina shaped them as they were, half man and half beast. "Turn your ears to the sky, creatures. I have seen you ascend from 4 paws to the hands and feet of man. You are greater now than ever before, and your lives have been given purpose. Learn to survive in your new forms. Band together, become brothers with those who share your birth. Grow and prosper in this land. Someday, a man covered in metal will challenge your right to live. You must destroy him and his people." The Beastmen settled where they stood, in the heart of the savannah, and cultivated their population into a warrior race. They were very efficient. Within only a few years they had established the extent of their territory, formalized and organized their military strength, tactics, and infrastructure. On a vacation expedition in 277, human king Allant IV wandered into the savannah inhabited by the Beastmen. Upon meeting them, Allant IV declared war, believing the Beastmen to be another form of corruption. Thus began the Pharaoh Wars, a bloody engagement that lasted nearly 100 years. The humans fought primarily on the defensive, being that the Beastmen were so spread out and impossible to demoralize. The humans learned early on that leading counter-assaults against the beastmen were guaranteed losses, due both to the terrain and the tactics of the beasts, guerrilla warfares on one hand with the Khalilfo, and better coordinated units on the other hand, thanks to the superiority of Volpilfo pack mentality. The Lizalfo made for devastating berserker assaulters, easily overwhelming most enemy soldiers in single combat. The Bovilfo, rare on the front lines, joined the fight when provoked by mowing down groups of human soldiers by the sheer force of their size and strength. Needless to say, the humans' advantages of numbers and supply was matched by the superiority of beastmen's skill in combat. However, their match was a stalemate. The massive stone fortifications of Boletaria made invasion nearly impossible for the beasts, although they managed on several occasions to overwhelm human defenses. Significant change wouldn't be had until year 376, 99 years after the declaration of war. A new breed of beast showed itself, something that didn't care how tall and strong the humans' walls were. They were the Avilfo, winged creatures that soared through the skies and struck mighty blows against the defenders of Boletaria. They came in the night, and, unprepared, the city's defenders were plucked one by one from their posts. The walls became prime targets of the new beastmen, and before long the city's defenses were rendered ineffective. With the walls bare, the ground beasts mounted an assault and breached the city. Alant VII was king by that time. Under his leadership, the city was evacuated by the cover of darkness, although only a small portion of the city's population was able to escape the grasp of the invading beastmen, who had begun flooding into the city. They spared no one. The refugees took what they carried on their backs across the sea to the west. They landed on Emesa Peninsula, although the ships were damaged due to heavy wind. The refugees would have to repair the ships before they could attempt to leave the continent in hopes the beast would not follow them across the ocean. The extermination of Boletaria was swift and efficient, and the beasts celebrated their ultimate victory by desecrating the throne and dancing in the yards among the dead humans. The survivors began to operate in the southern tip of the peninsula, developing no more than was required to fix the ships. It was estimated that only a couple weeks would be needed to make them worthy of ocean sailing, although these refugees had little choice in their situation. It was that, or walk back into the heart of the beast's territory. They made camp and began harvesting what lumber grew on the peninsula. The alpha of the Avilfo, Caliph Nessos, was flying around the shoreline to the south of Corinth, the beastmen's settlement. He took a strong liking to the misty breeze and vastness of the sea. When he had the freedom to do so, he enjoyed seeing the landscapes around their settlement. He came to the peninsula to explore it. Only a few days after the humans began their repair efforts, Nessos stumbled across their camp. Curious, he observed them from a cliff top overlooking their camp. He saw the humans rebuilding a camp, the beginnings of a fortress, the beginnings of a castle, the revival of a war waged for too long, and bitterly won at such great cost. Nessos left the humans and returned to Corinth. Instead of reporting his finding, he claimed to have seen nothing. He returned to the camp almost every day, observing and learning about the humans for around 10 days. He saw a part of them he hadn't considered before. They cared for each other. They worshipped the goddesses. They weren't building a bitter empire. They were trying to survive. And when they had nothing left to call home, they forged it from the clay and ash around them. Nessos was struck with an epiphany. He wanted to see them succeed. Upon his return to Corinth again, he found his fellow beasts mounting again for war. A Lizalfo patrolling the coast had found their ships. The beasts sent a small contingency of Lizalfo to test the humans' defenses, to find only a small party of soldiers and their king, Alant VII. Despite holding off the attackers, the humans knew they'd been found. They had been given enough time to repair their ships. However, they were not stocked for the journey, and their people were not prepared to leave. they needed time, and the beasts were already marching. Allant was forced to make a decision that no person wants to. They had enough supply to stock a single ship, and they did. Allant refused to board, standing with his sword drawn, facing the cliffs that would soon be covered in a torrent of attacking beasts. His friend, Richard, implored him to board for the sake of his people, but Allant stood fast. "If I get on that ship, I will be no better than my ancestors, who left their people to die time and time again. I am not my father." "You are king now, Richard. Take your wife and child, our best craftsmen, and any who will preserve our people. Board the ship and leave for the south. I will see that you make it offshore." Despite the protests, Richard accepted the crown in exchange for his helmet. Many were inspired by his gesture, and several men chose to stay beside Allant, grabbing whatever armor and weaponry they could find. Richard boarded the ship with his wife, his child, and an unspoken understanding with the mountain that was Allant. They would be the defenders of Bloodstone Hill, the men and women who secured the survival of the future of humankind in Solstice. What transpired there is not known. However, it is known that Allant and his men were somehow able to hold the beasts back long enough for Richard and the refugees to clear sight of the peninsula. Destination unknown to the beasts, safety was almost guaranteed for the survivors. Folklore is inconclusive with the culture of the Beastmen. Some stories say that Nessos was a traitor and turned against the beasts to save the humans. Others claimed Nessos and the Avilfo actually fought on Allant's side to further delay the beasts. While nothing can be confirmed, the beasts of Corinth today revere and honor Nessos and the extinct Avilfo as true followers of the goddesses. Totems can be seen in the city today in memorial of their sacrifice. The humans experienced a golden age of peace on the new continent. They landed on a rocky part of the shore, again damaging their ship. However, they had no intention of sailing again, and started to build up fortifications for the unknown dangers of the new land. While survival was not easy, the humans had grown accustomed to such strife. The beasts eventually discovered them again, but the distance made it difficult for the age-old foes to reach each other in any major way. A single, massive assault was made against the human fortress in 481, and the beasts were decisively struck down, unable to contend with the mountains and walls of the fortress without assistance from the Avilfo. Lionheart IV's death shortly after the victory marked the end of his line and the end of a long era of bloodshed. Lionheart's wife, Valencia, assumed the throne as queen in a controversial move. Immensely pious and respected by the Commonwealth, Valencia was idolized as an avatar of Bastet herself. Near the end of her life, Valencia arranged to return to Corinth herself, along with a small group of dignitaries and ambassadors. She declared their fortress a temporary settlement until her return from her mission, naming it Fort Austin after the son she left there. She took only her personal guard and carried with her a banner displaying the symbol of Balor. When met with scouts of the beasts, she assured them she was a harbinger of peace and asked to be taken to their caliphs. In 505, negotiations of peace began in Corinth, where the war originally began. The Bovilfo of Corinth accepted her embassy openly and earnestly, treating her and her companions with the utmost hospitality. The Volpilfo joined, guarded and skeptical, clad in armor and armed to the teeth. The Felilfo came to the meeting adorned in garb designed in Balor's colors, speaking of blessing for their people. The Lizalfo sent in only their alpha, Caliph Boss, as the rest of the clan was not trusted to maintain peace. "We have done our parts," began the human queen, "and did our best for the goddesses, who so generously brought us to this beautiful but sick land. We have spent much time hating one another, killing one another, and I have seen more good people die than I can bear to utter. I wish the bloodshed to end. I am the human Caliph Valencia, their queen. If killing me is what you require to let my people live, then so be it. I will not resist your claws and fangs. Let the war be over. However, I have seen you welcome us, treat us well, despite our pasts. I thank you for your hospitality, and hope that in time our children's children will remember us as we were loved by Baelor, developing and helping one another. If not, let us become servants of Acheron, and exist for nothing better than killing each other over and over again, until the corruption claims us for good. The Bovilfo accepted peace. The Fililfo offered an exchange of divine knowledge and cultures as an offering of peace. The Volpilfo, impressed by the queen's resolve, accepted her offering. The Lizalfo, however, refused. Caliph Bos would not hear negotiations, and threatened several times to cash in on her offer to kill her. Tensions built at the meeting, and the Caliph spent a great effort keeping Bos at peace. However, he could not be convinced. He lunged and struck the queen down, whom neither flinched nor braced in defense. Her final words, "Peace, wash away our sins." The Lizalfo collectively began fighting those who counterattacked Caliph Bos for assassinating the queen, sparking civil war in Corinth. The Lizalfo were defeated, although not easily, despite being outnumbered 3-1. Caliph Bos was killed in the initial skirmish, and when the battle ended, the Lizalfo were told to leave Corinth, whether they were involved or not. Many beasts agreed with Caliph Bos that peace was not in their best interest. They also left, realizing that coexisting with the opposite viewpoint would be impossible. The Lizalfo banished, migrated north to a more appropriate climate, the marshlands of the far northwest. There they began building what would later become Gideon, the Lizalfo marshlands. The civil war lasted until 518, when the Lizalfo were declared defeated and utterly dissected from the beastmen, so much that they were no longer considered of the same origin. Basset, seeing the creatures of Solstice finally settling down, decided to invest in another civilization to investigate the region while the beasts and humans rebuilt their societies. In year 547, the Bretons set out from the heart of the land, taking Basset's orders, same as given to the humans, to heart. They weren't sure where to go, or what exactly would tell them that they were ready to settle, so they began to wander around the sanctuary rather aimlessly. In 565, the great-grandson of Queen Valencia, convinced that the beasts were to honor their promises of peace, decided to go on expedition again. This time they would settle in a place that they could prosper for good, their final settlement. They traveled along the shoreline in search of the perfect location. Seeing the Bretons meander without much hope of landing soon, Basset called the dwarves to Solstice. In 592 they arrived and set out for the southwest. It took them only a year to find a place to settle. They declared it Dalgan in 593 and began digging the massive cavern that would eventually become the city we know today. The humans and dwarves encountered each other shortly after the establishment of Dalgan, and they quickly tapped into the advantages of being close and well synergized, as the dwarves lacked the manpower and resources of the humans, whereas the humans lacked the technology and innovation needed to turn their traditional buildings and fortresses into larger, stronger, and more efficient structures. Together, the humans and dwarves found building and rebuilding to be much easier. The humans settled again, for the last time, in 627, in a castle built onto a mountain overlooking the ocean. Named Castle Black for the immense quantity of coal located in the face of the mountain, this fortress withstood all forms of invasion. The Wild Ones are beastmen who descended from the exiled losers of the Civil War. They continue to pose a threat to the humans despite their lack of larger organization and population. Despite constant defeat and hollow victory, the Wild Ones relentlessly attacked the Castle Black and its extensive attempts to expand. The struggle to grow the city was helped by dwarven technology, but the constant onslaught of beasts made progress slow for both parties. In 631, nearly 100 years after their arrival, the Bretons settled. Located in the extreme northeast corner of the sanctuary, they called their town Jehanna, and began cultivating the land there and their magical skills. Being so far from the others, the Bretons would be left to their own devices for a very long time. Seeing the Bretons settle, Basset called the elves to Solstice. They arrived in 674 and moved quickly in the direction no one else had. By 681 they discovered the valley in the southeast and began building what we know today as Delphine. Unimpressed with the humans' issues and totally disinterested in the Bretons, the elves remained isolated for many years. In 683, Castle Black had become expanded enough that an actual town was functioning in the valley below the palace. This was thanks to advancements in Dwarven technology that allowed for the fast, efficient, and cheap installation of superior defensive mechanisms on gates, walls, and roads. The Wild Ones were rendered almost entirely incapable of laying siege or attacking the humans. After a while, attacks simply ceased to appear. The mechanic behind these defenses was a man named William Barrow, and, as thanks for his crucial assistance, the king named the city Barrowstone, the human citadel. In 745, another newcomer arrived in the sanctuary. This time it was not a race, but a guild. They were Regnum Electus, the king's chosen. Unlike the others, the Regnum people were not told to leave the heartland from whence they came. Instead, they were asked to lay claim to it and rule over the lands to maintain order and peace amongst the other civilizations, that hopefully they could work together towards uprooting the corruption of the sanctuary. Led by King Lunari, the Regnum people began digging a cavern much like the dwarves. This would later become the city of Elysian. King Lunari traveled to each settlement and spread the news of the Regnum arrival and his sovereignty by order of Basset. "As long as humans were in Solstice, they were supreme," said Alistair II. "You are a guest in these lands, Don Lunari. You will not claim sovereignty above your predecessors." Unable to agree, the only solution was a duel. Wild speculation and rumor follow the events of the duel. What is known is that Alistair II was struck by lightning during the fight. Some claim King Lunari summoned it, while others suggest it was Basset smiting the heretical king. Either way, no further challenges were made to King Lunari's reign. The Regnum ambassador, Marshal Fox, a human knight, stayed behind in Barrowstone to oversee a smooth transition of power for Alistair III, the current king. Marshal's job is primarily to secure relations between Barrowstone and the Regnum people and avoid retaliation for the death of their former king. 10 years later, you arrive to find the legends of a new land teeming with both life and death are true. Where do you fit in this story? Who are you? And where did you come from? Why have you found yourself in Solstice? Nobody can answer these questions for you. And rest assured, the gods are watching your every move. What will you bring to Solstice? Will you destroy the corruption choking the life from the sanctuary? Perhaps you'll feed it and push Solstice closer and closer to oblivion. Only time will tell what you'll make of this opportunity. Slowly, you'll forget your home, the world outside of the sanctuary. Over time, you'll lose grip on everything you were before arriving. Soon, you may even forget yourself. Let us pray the corruption does not consume you, although not many have the choice. Your soul is bound to the land, and the strength of your spirit is the only thing between you and the abyss. Even death is no escape from the darkness that eclipses this place. From these ashes, rise to godhood, or be utterly forgotten.